Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the bonus version of the Stephen King podcast. This is bonus episode number 27, and today I have with me writer, podcaster, Jennifer Gordon. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Lou. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Thank you for coming on. How's things in your neck of the woods?
Living the dream, living my best pandemic life.
Right.
So I'm in New Hampshire in the United States. So I am, relatively remote. Mm-hmm. We're not too overwhelmed with COVID cases or anything like that.
Right.
Much more overwhelmed than we should be, but I'm not living in a scary place.
That's good. Well, you are a horror writer, so maybe you should be in a scary place.
Well, I always say...
You mean mentally.
Yeah, mentally for sure. Yeah. No, I always say, I think I'm destined to be a horror writer because I'm from New England. It is Stephen King country that I live in.
Right.
I do set my books in Maine. I live probably about 45 minutes from Joe Hill. So
wow. Cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do exactly?
Well, my name is Jennifer Gordon. I usually, my author name is technically Jennifer Ann Gordon, Ann with an E, like Anne of Green Gables. I am a horror writer. My debut novel came out last year called Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. And last week I just found out that book won the Kindle Award for Best Horror Novel of 2020. So that was...
Congratulations.
I know, that was exciting. And I felt like I won an Oscar. So,
that's fantastic.
A book Oscar. So that was my debut novel, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. Since then, I have also released a Victorian gothic horror novel called From Daylight to Madness. And the follow-up to that book is actually coming out in 10 days.
Wow.
Actually, 9 days.
Fantastic.
9 days.
Wow.
Now that I look at the calendar, I'm like, oh gosh, 9 days. 9 days.
Okay. Yeah, we're recording this on November 10th, so just keep that in mind because this podcast probably won't be out for a couple of days or a week or so.
Yeah. So my new book is coming out November 19th, everyone.
Okay. All right. Hopefully I will have the podcast up before then. I'll do my best.
Don't worry.
No problems. Okay, so let's start back at the beginning. Were you a avid reader growing up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to the point where my mom's friends thought that there was something wrong with me because during summer, everybody would be outside playing and girls were trying to get tans and parading around in bathing suits. And I was hiding in my living room, just obsessively reading anything I could get my hands on.
Okay. And who were your favorite authors growing up?
So growing up, I started, my really binge reading started probably when I was 6 or 7, and I read all of the Nancy Drew books, and then I went right back to the beginning and reread them, and then I reread them actually about 10 years ago, and I was surprised at how weirdly racist most of them are. And I'm like, oh, yikes! Okay. So I read the Nancy Drew books. I loved Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine for children. I shouldn't say children's horror, but YA horror.
Yep.
But then when I was about 10, my uncle had come to stay with us for a while, and he had a book in his bedroom that I was snooping around in his bedroom and found it. And it had a giant cat on it. And I thought, oh, I didn't know there were grown-up books about cats. And this cat looked really angry. So I snatched that book out of his room and I ran upstairs and I sat behind my dollhouse because I knew I probably shouldn't have this book. And that was when I discovered Stephen King, and that book was Pet Sematary. And
wow, what a place to start.
I know. And I I read a few chapters of it, and I just remember thinking, oh, I definitely shouldn't have this book. So I read it in secret, and it changed my life, obviously. And
Right.
because it taught me, I mean, so much about fright, just about being petrified, because it also blended sadness. So it was sad, and it was so scary.
Right.
And I think that has led me to be the writer I am today in many ways, because I write a lot about grief and the horror of loss,
Right.
and the slow descent into madness at times.
Right.
So
Boy, you started off with a banger, because to me, that still is the scariest book. There's the one scene I'll never, it sticks with me every time I read it, is the when Louis digging up his son out of the cemetery, and then he opens a casket and he pulls the cotton from his lips, and his lips make that little plip sound.
Plip,
like every time I read that, plip, I just go,
I'm like, oh, I know, that gives me chills. Like, just like thinking of it gives me chills.
Yeah.
I did an interview with the website Horror Tree last year, and the person who was interviewing me had read my book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, and they said, this must get compared to Pet Sematary a lot. And I was like, oh, no, but thank you for saying that. And I didn't put two and two together, because my book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, is about a man trying to reconnect with like the spirit of his very young son who died.
Oh, okay.
And I guess I never even put it together with Pet Sematary, even when I was writing it, until somebody said, oh, this reminds me of Pet Sematary. And
cool. Yeah. The subconscious mind, the rivers run deep.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. There's no cat in my book.
Oh, okay. So I'm wondering, was it that book that sparked your, or lit a light bulb for you, saying, I want to write this, I want to write like this kind of book too? Or did that come later?
I think it came later, to be honest. I always wrote, especially starting when I was about 12. I wrote a lot of stories, just random stories. I remember I tried to write a legal drama when I was 12, and I didn't obviously know anything about law or courtrooms. So the book made absolutely no sense at all. Or I should say the story. And I turned it in to my teacher for extra credit. And she was like, I'll give you extra credit, but just so you know, this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, you should probably have gone to the library and done some research.
So we learned a lesson.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I can't just fake it.
Yeah.
And I think that's right when she said research that I thought in my head, I'm switching to poetry. And I was mainly a poet for many years.
Okay.
And but the horror, I love horror. It's my go-to genre for reading. It's my go-to genre for things I watch.
Right.
And I always had the story for Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent kind of banging around in my head since I was in college. I thought I was going to write a play, because I went to school for theater, and then it didn't work as a play because I couldn't make my ghost as terrifying as I saw her in my head. Okay.
Is there any basis in real life experiences for the book, or
there's a little bit of real life experiences. Not, I mean, I do believe in ghosts, I do believe in hauntings, but the ghost in my book she's more me than she is a ghost.
Okay.
In many ways. Right. She was a victim. She was killed by her soon-to-be husband because they were in an abusive relationship. So,
okay.
And that happens 60 years ago, and she spent 60 years kind of haunting him and just torturing him.
Okay. So you mentioned you liked horror. I assume that you went on to read other King books and other horror writers as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I think my favorite Stephen King book, I always go back and forth between Salem's Lot and The Shining, because I think The Shining, I'm completely obsessed with like haunted hotels. I actually just, I just wrote a book about a haunted hotel, but it's more an asylum than a hotel, but still. And I love like the gothic nature of The Shining, but there's something about Salem's Lot that just really, really got to me. The Marsden
Right.
house,
Mm-hmm.
and I really loved the way he handled kind of the infection of the town by the vampires. Like it just,
Right.
it, that part, it still gives me chills when I think
Mm-hmm.
about it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I've read a lot of King. I haven't read everything, but
Understandable. There's a lot to read.
there's a lot. There's a lot. He's very
Yeah.
prolific.
Yeah.
But I also love Peter Straub. I love Ghost
Yeah.
Story. I think
Uh-huh.
that's Shirley Jackson is my absolute favorite. Haunting of Hill
Mm.
House is
Right.
my Bible. I even have a quote from it tattooed on my arm.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
That's serious. That's serious.
Yes. Yeah. Just a little sidebar. What did you think of the Mike Flanagan adaptation of it and Blind Manor for that matter?
Oh, I loved both of them.
Right.
To be honest, I know some Jackson purists didn't appreciate what he did with Hill House.
Right.
But I went into it not thinking it was going to be Shirley Jackson's Hill House. It was just inspired by.
Well, just by the length of it alone, you knew it wasn't going to be.
Exactly. I'm like, it's like 10 episodes. That's not even a long book.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I thought visually it was chilling. It was beautiful. He did things cinematography.
Yeah, such a good eye. Yeah.
Yeah, such a good eye. And that one episode where I don't want to give too many spoilers. If people are
6,
listening to this,
the funeral home episode.
Yep. I'm a sucker for things that are done in like long shots.
Yeah.
And I was like screaming, I think, through half of that episode, just like, oh my gosh, he hasn't cut the film away yet.
Yeah.
I love it. I think because I went to school for theater and I always did plays, I didn't do film or anything. So I just love that intensity that you can get from a performance when you can't stop.
Yeah, it's if you watch, because I have the Blu-rays and there's like some behind the scenes featurettes on that episode of how they filmed that, and you just realize how difficult it was to do. And yeah, it's just pretty fantastic.
The set alone was insane.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
So I loved it. I loved Bly Manor too, and I know some people
different story. But yeah, in the end, it all paid off rather well. But I have to admit, like the third, fourth episode, I was kind of like, "Where's this going?" I'm getting kind of lost. And then then you get to this reveal episode again, and then it's like, "Oh, okay."
Exactly.
And then it's just
I remember for me it was episode 4, and I was like, "It's kind of dragging a little."
Yeah.
And then something happened. I was like, "Okay, no, you got me." And but the reveal episode, and then. Everything from episode 4 on for me, I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Just one more King question. I don't want to take too much of the time away from you, but because you did mention The Shining as one of your favorite books. What did you think of Dr. Sleep?
I loved it. I loved, I was a big fan of the book.
Right.
And I had very high expectations of the movie.
Right.
And I thought they did the best they could in marrying the mythology of the Kubrick's Shining with Stephen King's Shining and obviously King's Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
I think they did the best they possibly could. As, like a King purist, I love the Kubrick version, but it's not his book.
Right. Yep.
But you can't ignore that because it's horror canon. You have to it's burned in our retinas, everything from that version.
And
of
more
The Shining.
people know that version than they do the book. So
right, exactly. They never go. They always think of that the maze. Like they don't think of the hedge animals coming to life because
exactly.
They don't know that happened.
I agree with you. I actually think if he would have been able to follow the book version of the state of the Overlook Hotel, I actually think the movie would have ended stronger. But I still like what he did, and I was really surprised with how he handled the fate of some of the main characters. But within the context of the movie, I thought he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, me too. I was just going to say, and I think Ewan McGregor is an incredible talent. So
Rachel Ferguson was fantastic as Rosa Hat too. So
I
she
know.
was really good. Yeah, even the girl that played Abby was fantastic. Yeah. So you said you read King. What other horror writers did you gravitate towards?
Oh, almost anybody I could get my hands on, to be honest. Currently,
You mentioned Straub.
Yeah, Straub, I loved Ghost Story. I loved Lost Boy, Lost Girl. Clive Barker, I liked a lot. I've kind of stopped reading Clive Barker.
I think he stopped writing too.
Yeah,
for a long time.
I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Currently, I love Paul Tremblay.
Yep.
And I got to interview him on my show, and he was fantastic. And I love Josh Malerman.
Yep.
But I also really like gothic horror, or gothic fiction. I don't, people call it two different things. So I love Wendy Webb, Carol Goodman. They kind of Jennifer McMahon. They dip their toes in like that, in the horror pool, but it's not strict horror.
Okay. All right. So you've grown up reading a lot of horror, and then you get out of the house and you're gone to school. At what point in that did you realize that you wanted to start writing?
I always thought I had a novel in me. I always, said like, I have a novel in me. Someday I'm going to write a book. But I think as you get older, and I'm not old, but as you get older, you spend a lot of time telling yourself what you can't do.
Yeah.
So, and I hinted at it when I was talking about my ghost in Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. For a long time, I was in an abusive relationship, and that...
Oh, sorry to hear that.
That it ruined my self-esteem. So anything that I thought I could do, I had convinced myself I couldn't.
Right.
So getting out of that relationship, I got out a while ago, about 8 years ago, but it took a while to really bounce back, I think, and really remember who I was. And I just kept saying, okay, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write something. I'm going to write something. And then I said, I should probably take a class because I can't do it. I'm never going to know how to do it. I'll be bad at it. And the person who I am with now just said, you're not going to be bad at it. Just sit down and try writing. You have an idea. And so I did. I just sat down and wrote Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, and now it won an award. So
fantastic.
I think, people were right that I could just do it. But way back in like 8th grade, high school, all those things, every time there was like a yearbook and it said like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I always wrote, I'll be writing books and living in Vermont, I think is what I said. I don't know why I picked Vermont. I think picking Maine would just have been too on the nose.
Right. So your college years, you were not taking any writing courses or anything, or you've never taken formal writing courses of any type? I took some, but so I went to college. I went to a fine arts school. And so there weren't like, I don't want to say real classes, but everything was based on theater and acting. Okay.
So I did a lot of character development courses because of developing a character for the stage. And that I use all the time in my writing, like developing people. Cool. And then later on, after I graduated, I got my BFA. And then later on, I went back to school for a couple years and I took some writing classes then.
Oh, okay. And did you start out with a novel, or did you write short stories? You mentioned poetry as well. What was your earlier output?
Mostly it was poetry. I did some freelance journalism work. Like I wrote for a newspaper for a little bit off and on. And then I wrote a comic book. I wrote like a graphic novel, but that was it wasn't horror. It was autobiographical. I guess that could be horror. Actually, never mind. Scratch that. It was totally horrifying. It was about me when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
So I always wrote, but that my first novel was last year, was when it was published. And even then I sat down and just thought to myself, I don't know what's going to come out. Like this might be a short story. It might be a novella. I don't know. I'm not a plotter. I don't have an outline. I don't know I usually kind of know where it will end, but I have no idea how I'm going to get there. So you just took away a lot of my questions right there. But sorry.
That's good. I was gonna say I was gonna guess that based on what you've told me, that you sound more like a pantser than a plotter.
I'm definitely a pantser.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to outline to save my life.
Okay. So I'm always curious because I'm much more regimented because in my day job I'm a IT person, so
Oh my
I'm always
gosh.
have to do like technical writing and whatnot, and so I'm very structured, and I need to know, if not the fine details, but I need to know like the map of from start to finish. And I'm always fascinated by pantsers because I just don't know how you guys stay on the main arc of the story without getting stuck in dead ends and things like that.
Well, sometimes we don't. I mean, so I'm always jealous of plotters because I'm just like,
uh,
it must. And I was thinking about it when I started. I'm working on a new piece now, very early days. And I thought to
mhm.
myself, I wonder if it would be easier if I knew what was going to happen. Like, that might
Right.
just be easier. And then quickly I was like, oh, who cares? And then I just started typing.
Yeah.
Like, I know the end.
Yeah, it's always like the contrast. If you've ever seen any interviews with Stephen King and John Grisham always knows the last line of his book, and Stephen King just cannot fathom how anybody could finish a book if they know how it's going to end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of agree with that. Like, I know my end, like, roughly, but
Hmm.
sometimes it changes.
Sure.
Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent always had in my head when I was writing it two possible endings, and I didn't know which ending I was going to end up with.
So what? One ending was grim, and the other one was grimmer.
Yes, actually. Really, it was. You know, my mom said, like, why can't you just write something nice? Why can't it be like a nice book? And I'm like, this is a nice book. She's like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I read the back of it and it doesn't sound like a nice book.
Right.
I'm like, oh well.
Okay. So your pants on that, but once you like finish the book, do you put it away for a while and then come back to it? Did you send it out? Do you have beta readers, or like how does
I
your
do
post
have,
writing work?
yeah, I do have beta readers.
Hmm.
And normally I feel like my books tend to be like part one and part two. There's like two parts to these stories. So usually when I
Okay.
get like halfway through the second part of the book, I'll send out part one to my beta readers so they have
Mm,
something. So that way I know if I'm on the right track. So when like I go
right.
back to write draft two,
Hmm.
I'll have a clearer understanding of if the story's even working,
Right.
what people like.
Hmm.
I my book From Daylight to Madness that came out over the summer, for some reason everybody kind of gravitated towards this, all my beta readers towards this like one side character that is not a likable character. And
Right.
she's truly awful. And I
Mm,
liked her being awful, but
right.
everybody just kept saying like, we need more Agnes, more Agnes. I loved Agnes.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh God, okay. But then I kind of had that in the back of my head when I was writing the sequel to that book. I didn't make her a lead character by any means, but I did give her more airtime.
Mm.
But now I feel like because she's not likable. When this
Hmm.
book comes out, people might be like, "Oh gosh, maybe that's too much Agnes,"
Or maybe they
or
want
they're
even
going to
more.
say, "Oh, oh, yeah, she is worse than I thought she was."
When's she
I
gonna
mean,
get her
she's
own
very
book?
twisted. I know. And then as I was writing her in the second book, I thought, oh, I always had planned this as just a 2-book series. And then I'm like, maybe she should get her own book. But
Right. Right.
no, I don't think I could.
Okay.
She's very twisted, very damaged.
A couple of mundane technical questions, but I'm always curious about these. Is what do you use to write with? Do you have any special software? Are you just a Word person?
I'm just a Microsoft Word person, just a Microsoft Word on my laptop. Usually, sometimes at like the night, I write during the day
Mm-hmm.
up until maybe about like 6 or 7 at night. Then my
Okay.
brain turns to mush, so I can't really write
Okay.
later than that. But sometimes at night, like as I'm about to drift off to sleep, I get these flashes of things that like, whether it's conversation or just like a couple lines. And then I just kind of use my phone. I just like text myself any kind of ideas I might have. And then the next day I translate that onto into Microsoft Word.
Okay.
But if I write poetry, I write in a journal, and I handwrite.
Okay.
But for novels or short stories, or even if I do like a guest post someplace, I just go straight to the typing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So, looking at your books, because you've mentioned Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent as your latest book.
No, that's my first book.
That's your first book. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So then you have From Daylight to Madness and When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. That's 2 series book.
Yes, that is. And When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, that is the one that comes out on November 19th.
Okay, and is that just book 2 of an ongoing series, or is there a trilogy?
It's a duet. I'm not going to say there might eventually be a third book or a fourth book, but this rounds out the story because it's a story specifically about 2 characters. And for the life of me, I thought I was just going to write one book about these 2 characters, but I realized there was I couldn't really do it. I wasn't doing either of them justice.
Right. Okay. So Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent is a ghost story?
Yes.
Basically? Yeah. And what are these other books?
They are, there's a ghost aspect, but they are Victorian Gothic novels, and they deal a lot with the way the mentally ill were treated in the 1870s. So the first book, From Daylight to Madness, is about a woman named Isabel who gives birth to a child who dies almost right away. And her family thinks she's not grieving properly.
Okay.
Either she's not sad enough, or sometimes she's too sad. And now she's not able to have children anymore. So they kind of conspire to send her to a hotel. Hotel has air quotes around it.
Right.
But it's really an asylum. And so it's about her and her guilt over losing a child and kind of just her journey at this really terrible place.
Okay. So is it a redemption story, or? I
don't want to give too much away.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's an aspect to that.
Okay.
There's an aspect to her. She does.
All right.
She feels she wants redemption.
I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to Stephen King, but because I'm just looking at the book cover and I'm getting like Shawshank Redemption vibes or something like that. So that's why I was asking if it was a redemption story. But
the second book, When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk, is more a redemption story because it focuses on another character, and so there's a little bit of that. It's his journey through kind of repressed memories and mental illness.
Okay. So you've mentioned that you've taken theater and arts and so forth. So I see from your website that you're into paintings and you've been an art model, and you also have a book out, Victoriana, Mixed Media Art.
Yes.
What's that all about? So
for many years before I was writing, I actually did make my living as an artist. I was selling these Victorian era based mixed media pieces. They were photo manipulation mixed with acrylic paint, oil pastels, oil paint, collage, old paper, everything I could get my hands on, tears.
Right.
And so, I haven't really been actively doing art for a few years now, or, for a while now, but I still love it. And I always had it in my head that I wanted to have like a coffee table book of my mixed media pieces. So that's what that is.
Okay. And I imagine all the work that you've done there must have helped feed your Daylight to Madness. What's the name of that series? Does it have a name?
It's called The Hotel.
The Hotel? Okay.
Yeah.
Because if it's in a Victorian age setting, then all the work that you did on that with your other stuff really must have feed that.
It did help. It did help. I feel like I have a weakness for the Victorian era, as I will say.
Okay. And so you've got this second book coming out, When the Sleeping Dead Still Talk. And what are you working on now?
And this is going to bring it right back to Stephen King.
Okay.
I am working on a contemporary novel. It's it's hard to describe it without saying, imagine The Stand, but with a meet cute in the middle. So it's a dystopian rom-com.
Okay.
um, so
well, those are two popular genres, so
it's, I'm having fun because I spent so much time on with the hotel series writing about the Victorian era that it was very refreshing to go back to modern times. And yeah, it's about, a virus, if you will.
Okay.
But instead of killing people, it just makes them very ugly. So think leprosy meets like a herpes virus type of thing.
Lovely.
So it's uplifting. But my main characters are an Instagram influencer. So her whole life is just like her taking pictures of herself. And the other main character is a failed politician, the son of the vice president of the United States. So it's
wow, there's some strong echoes there. Yeah. And I was going to, because one of the questions I been asking this year too with my interviews is, how has the world situation with the COVID and whatnot affected your writing, or has it? And it certainly sounds like for you it has.
What's funny is I have like this list of books and plots in this little notebook that like, these are the books I'm going to work on. And I came up with the idea for the piece that I'm working on right now, which is called Pretty Ugly. I came up with it before COVID.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be another writer writing about a plague. But yeah, I'm another writer writing about a plague. And it's fine. I think half the people I've interviewed this year are like, so then I wrote a book about a virus. Yeah. It's hard not to.
Yeah. Well, it's got staying power. I mean, look, Stephen King's The Stand came out in 1977, and it's getting another shot as a miniseries this year. So
I'm
this
so
December.
excited.
So it's crazy. It's funny when you're talking about your new book, and the effects of disease. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever read the Swan Song by Robert McCammon, where everybody goes basically like this hard shell mask over their face.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, you probably should read it after you finish yours so you're not influenced.
I know. So
but it's Robert McCammon's he's a pleasure reader of mine. He does the Matthew Corbett series, which is kind of like an 18th century Sherlock Holmes, James Bond kind of character in New York City. It's up to 11 books now, and it's a fantastic series. But if you like that era, I think you would get quite a kick out of his books. They're quite good, and he's a great writer. He may be a little more schlocky than B genre kind of thing, but his books are just a lot of fun. And another one he has is like another one he has is The Wolf Hour. It's about World War II, about a guy that's a werewolf working as a agent for the British Secret Service. So that's pretty cool too. So
I know, it sounds fun.
Yeah, he's a really great writer, but he's never really had the same, as like a lot of writers don't get the same level of attention as like a Stephen King or Peter Straub or whoever. But there's a lot of good writers out there, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing this podcast, is to, in some small way, help you guys maybe shine a light somewhere that hits, and who knows what happens, because it's you just never can tell what's going to catch somebody's eye or ear or whatnot.
I know, it's true. It's like there's always that, like, I always feel like there's 5 books that come out a year that kind of change the way people start thinking about books again. And like, it's the I'm on Instagram, I'm obsessed with Bookstagram. I just like love looking at pretty pictures of books. I can't do it myself. I've tried to take pretty pictures of books. I can't. But I feel like every third post is a picture of Mexican Gothic.
Okay. So talking about book covers and that, do you design your book covers, or do you have somebody do that for you?
I designed the cover of my first book, Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. But then I met this great artist. His name is Don Noble. And I just loved his work so much. And so he designed the covers for the hotel series. Okay. And he's going to design the cover for Pretty Ugly too, because he has a really great horror vibe. Every time I see his covers, I love them. Cool. But I do design covers for other people.
Wow.
I think it's harder for me to design a cover for my own book. Like
Right.
I'm too close to it.
So are you self-published, or are you do with the publishing?
I am self-published now. Beautiful, Frightening,
Okay.
and Silent was traditionally published, but
Okay.
I decided, mainly because, again, like with the pandemic and everything, I had it in the back of my mind that maybe at some point in the future, not anytime soon, that I might start a small publishing company.
Okay.
Very small, but I
Right.
don't really know anything about it. So I thought if I could self-publish, I would be able to teach myself. And
how did you find that?
that I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's a lot to it that I didn't know before going in. Now I do, and I realize that I cannot go it alone. So it is good to have a team behind me. I have a great publicist, Mickey Mickelson from Creative Edge. So he's amazing. He's a huge help. I work with a small company called Books and Moods, and they handle my launches for me and send out my ARC copies and book my blog tours. So I've realized that I can't do things all by myself. That I think to be, self-published well, you still need a team.
Yeah. It's remarkable how much the book market has changed over, you could say before, I would say last 10 years, but even the last 5, maybe the last 2, the move to self-publishing, independent publishing it's more the norm than not nowadays.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really, you're right. It's changing the way books are published. And it's also changing the way publishers publish books, because I don't want to say gone are the days of like those humongous book deals for unknown authors, because it does still happen, but it doesn't happen as much as it was before.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I have a friend who is an agent, a good friend who's an agent, and she was talking about, since COVID especially, publishing companies they're expecting more from their big name authors, because it's like a guaranteed sale. A Stephen King book is going to sell no matter what.
Yeah.
And people are definitely buying more books, but a lot of times they're re-signing their already established authors. So instead of having an author who puts out 1 book a year, they're saying, okay, this year we're going to do 2 books this year.
Yeah. Yeah. How about, have you dabbled in audiobooks at all? Because that's a big market.
Yet. I know.
Yeah.
I want to.
Come on, Jennifer, get on.
I know. I'm a little daunted by it.
Yeah.
But I really want to. And people have been asking this more and more the past few weeks for me.
I'm surprised at the sales. For some authors, it's the bulk of their sales nowadays.
I know, it's true.
It's
and
crazy.
I love audiobooks, to be honest. I mean, I've read The Stand in its entirety 2 times, and I've listened to the entire audiobook, which I just adored. I got it from the library, and it was 20 CDs.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. I haven't listened to a lot of audiobooks. I find it takes longer to get through the story.
It does.
But the one that I always recommend to people, especially for Stephen King, is Bag of Bones, because he narrates it. And man, with the incidental music, jazz music, and that book is just fantastically creepy. I just can't get over how great that is.
Oh my gosh,
I highly recommend that.
Listen to it.
Yeah.
I also
anytime Stephen King reads, or narrates, who knows the characters better. So
I feel like that when Neil Gaiman narrates his own books too. I'm just like, oh gosh, it's so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
The audiobook of Carrie is really good because it's Sissy Spacek.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So another thing I wanted to touch briefly on is you also do podcasts.
I do.
And it has a very awesome name.
Yes. So I am one of the hosts, and I created the show Vox Vomitus, which is fancy Latin, fake Latin for word vomit. And we air Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We are on the Global Authors on the Air Network, and it's a great show. I co-host it with 2 other authors, Allison Martine and Trisha Ridinger McKee. And we get to talk to some of today's biggest writers, best writers, bestsellers, and we have a drink with them and we ask them about all of their bad writing instead of all of their good writing.
Oh, interesting.
Like we tap a little bit into the, like, okay, you have a new book out and it's good, but tell me about all your mistakes, or tell me about like the worst thing you've ever written. And it's very funny. It's you know, we laugh so much, probably maybe because of the alcohol, but.
Okay. And so you do this weekly?
I do. Yeah.
Wow.
Every Wednesday. And then
intense.
I know. I will say, kind of looking forward to having 2 weeks off during Christmas.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But we started in July, and I guess I didn't know how it would take off. I thought we were going to have a hard time booking guests, and we're booked out through March.
Wow.
And it's been great. I feel like each episode is almost like a mini masterclass because I've got to talk to people like Paul Tremblay, who I absolutely adore, Carol Goodman, Wendy Webb. I've talked to all of them.
Right.
We got to talk to James Rollins and Mary Burton and, you know, Diane Zinna, and it just like amazing names, amazing names, Alison Cooper. And it's good to learn from these people. We can't talk to Stephen King. I've asked. He doesn't do interviews like this.
Right.
He won't do podcasts.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what about Joe Hill?
Yeah. Joe would probably do it. Yeah.
No one in the King family.
Oh,
they're
okay.
like,
That's
don't even ask. I'm like,
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. I'll have to check that out because, as you said, because writers are, you know, they're usually pretty harsh on their own work. So I'm sure that there's some great stories that are being told on those episodes.
Yeah. And I'm excited this Wednesday, tomorrow, we have Matt Ruff, who he wrote Lovecraft Country, which I'm not sure if you've read that. I've read the book. I have not watched the HBO show yet, but
yeah, I watched the first episode. I haven't gotten to the rest of it yet because then I got diverted by Blind Manor. So.
Oh yeah, I feel like was the path I was on too. I'm like, oh, I've got to watch Lovecraft Country, and then I'm like, oh, Blind Manor came out. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And if there's anything that hasn't come up during the podcast that you'd like to mention, here's your time.
Oh, gosh. Now that's like a lot of pressure. No, now I'm good. Bye, my
You're
books.
good. Okay. So people can find you at your website?
Yes, that's the easiest because my website has everything. It has all my social media links, links to buy the books. It has some reviews. It has some of my photography. So if people want to kind of nicely stalk me, I suggest going to JenniferAnnGordon.com. And again, that's Ann with an E.
Right. So. Fantastic. And when's the timetable for your next book to be out?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
Right. Because remember, I'm a pantser. I don't know how long this is going to be.
Right.
And I'm in the very early stages. It could be as long as The Stand. Or it could be 200 pages. I don't know.
Right. Generally, how many words are your books?
I really like, honestly, between like around 70,000. So like 225, 250 pages.
Okay.
I like, I don't want to say I like them short, but that seems, so far it's been my sweet spot.
Right.
That's how long they are. But like I said, I never know.
Right. Okay. Well, it's been a blast talking to you, and I wish you all the best with your future works. And when you finish your next book, you'll have to come back on.
Oh my gosh.
Could be next week. Could be next 5 years. Yeah. Because you're a pantser and you don't know.
I don't know.
Hopefully it won't take you that long.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, hopefully not.
Okay, Jennifer. Well, it's been a blast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.